Here are some things that I have noted in the nearly 25 years that I have lived. Our system is on the track to collapse because people do not understand how influential depression, misery, desperation, hatred, fear, apathy, and insecurity are. They will destroy societies, and no one seems to listen to me when I say this. Insecurity being the one that is a double whammy. One set of 7 deadly sins to push away people, and another set of 7 deadly sins to comfort oneself. It prevents exploration, understanding, and progression. It deludes you. All of them do. Having all makes you 56 times as susceptible to sin than a wrath issue. Then you get to the shackles of this chain. Power, ego, cowardice, trauma, isolation, comfort, and finally delusion. Having all of these makes you at bare minimum 392 times as susceptible to sin than if you were to just have a lust issue. In other words, religion uses the other stronger half of the chain and shackle to keep you in. Maybe try reading the Bible from cover to cover, discussing what the themes and anti-themes are, while simultaneously keeping your hands off the altar boys and girls and pronouncing yourselves holier than thou. Maybe then I will listen. And accept death, for Pete's sakes. Like, most people can barely plan what they'll do throughout the year, and you expect them to plan out the rest of what is theoretically eternity in paradise? Mate, by year 30, honestly, by 5 years, we'd be wanting better. And asking better from God in his paradise is definitely a hell sentence for you. Eternity. Let's actually fathom eternity. Eternity's life cycle is so long that you could watch our universe reincarnate 14 billion times and you wouldn't even be a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a decimal of a ludicrously small percent of eternity's life cycle. Not even a blink to eternity. But what if we come back to the rebirth of the universe? Theoretically, your life could restart over 14 billion times before eternity could even blink. And that's scaled if we stay in heaven and hell for as long as our universe cycle, then come back to an Earth-like planet, or maybe as something completely inanimate. Think about that. The atoms that create your consciousness could be shot out to anything on universal reincarnation. You could be walking, sitting, or running on the split consciousness of a species 13,000 universal cycles ago. That's enough for the religious nuts to be thinking about for the next 5 years. If you answer this quickly, you didn't think about it long enough. Science teaches you that answers don't come quickly, but that you must still strive to get them. Not always are the answers the ones we are most comfortable with, but we must find and accept them. Infrastructure. Our infrastructure is at a critical stage. Bridges aren't being maintained, telephone poles and lines aren't being fixed fast enough, and on God, can we get some fixed roads and some better public transport? Everyone knows rideshare apps are getting too expensive. Keeping affordable public transportation but making them more accessible and reliable will do wonders for traffic. And even if you're trying to get out of the country to avoid all these issues, guess what? The planes are breaking apart in the sky, so you might not even live long enough to actually explore a world without that. Oh, and next subject, let's get on standard of living. Rent is too damn high. Why in God's name, on a minimum wage salary, do I have only $68 after paying rent and all my bills and food? And then people want to say save your money. Well, let's put all the remainder in a Roth IRA. But you got to remember, you need at least $5,000 saved up to be qualified for the investment stages of the Roth IRA. Round up to $70 and you get paid bi-weekly. But wait, you need both paychecks to pay rent. So you can only invest $70 a month. In 1 year, you have only invested $840. After 5 years, you've only saved $4,200. You're still not qualified. Only after 6 years will you be qualified for the investment portions of the Roth IRA. Even if you saved $100 every month, it'll still take you 4.5+ years to get qualified. This is unsustainable. Here's an idea. Raise minimum wage. But wait, then the corporations will raise the prices to correspond, which in turn fuels inflation, making it to where saving $200 15 years in the future will be the same as saving $70 now. It's like people who struggle are meant to remain like that so that the others who don't struggle can remain comfortable in being scared of the real world. Maybe a price throttle if minimum wage increases could work. This could allow people to feel that their paycheck gets them farther, so that budgeting is a bit easier. But my head and reality are two different worlds. Next subject. Kids on the internet. Let me tell you how you fix this issue. It's very simple. Ban kids from the internet. Teens and preteens get unrealistic dating expectations and beauty standards on top of fraudulent financial advice and literal public harassment and criminal behavior. On top of that, getting stutters and verbosity from XQC, the honed vernacular of Kai Cenat, dating advice from Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit, and their political opinions from Aiden Ross and Hassan Piker, Destiny, Bosch, and Sneeko, all exacerbated by TikTok. Kids 9 and younger are listening to mature rappers like Sexy Red, getting scammed by Logan Paul while also being waterboarded by Prime from him and KSI, stuffed up with more expensive Lunchables and chocolate from Mr. Beast, exposed to borderline porn on YouTube Kids like Minecraft channel impersonators, and any kid younger than the age of 4 is getting spawn camp by Cocomelon. This is unacceptable. How are we continuing to raise our children like this? Parents should be able to entertain their kids without all these social media platforms. Get a bunch of movies, sit the kid down, and let them have fun. And stop judging and controlling them so much. They might come from you, but they are not you. Then you wonder why their pubescent phase is filled with a whole bunch of rebellious actions. You've choked out all their true self-expression throughout their entire life. Not only that, your views in going at life at best get you where you are. Who's to say those opportunities are still open now or even in the future? What if talking to different people gives your child the opportunities to be even more successful than you? Why would you rob that from them? I can understand hateful rhetoric, but things that you merely disagree with, come on! Be willing to learn and grow with your child. In many cases, focus on making sure your child is able to support themselves as an adult. When the child hates themselves, they also resent the people they feel could have prevented that hate. Secondly, teach your kids to ask questions. And you need to answer as many of those questions as truthfully as possible. Learn to separate your ego from your parenting. When you can't answer their questions, they'll feel more accomplished when they can get the answers that you don't have, giving them more motivation to learn. Who cares if they don't agree with how you look at the world? The fact that your mentality can raise people who don't look at the world the way you do, but also still highly respect you and listen to you, should be commended, not condemned. Let's tackle another subject, shitification and planned obsolescence. Here's a great question. When trying to satisfy the public, why in God's name are we making products and services with the purpose of breaking down? There's a point in the tradition and progression cycle where you expand way more than you progress. Basically the equivalent of adding more gizmos and gimmicks to products instead of actual improvements. The internet, Apple, EA, Ubisoft, and Disney are all some contributors to this problem. But any app or website super inundated with ads and pop-ups is a sign of this. Social media sites that focus on retention instead of user satisfaction, anyone? Products that break down or function less efficiently for companies to essentially min-max quality by expanding ludicrously more on modern technology rather than progressing to future technologies are a sign of this. Games that focus on in-app purchases and or have game-breaking bugs and glitches that cause the game to be in update hell for 3 years, and this is just to get the game in the condition it should have been on release. Movies that use themes, messaging, and lashing out at the audience as an excuse for failing to create understandable and in-depth characters, plots, and world building are all examples of this. It's exactly what happens when you get closer and closer to monopolies. Companies have no reason to put in true effort to innovate because nothing else competes with them. This is what true capitalists are trying to prevent, because it could always be Stalling off progression to create a status quo in which everyone knows the flaws, but it's uselessly lucrative, so people are stuck in a cycle of mediocrity and or repetitious quality. This is what we capitalists mean when we say small businesses are the backbone of our country. Education. The big E. Oh my God, let me tell you what you do about this. Teach kids actual life lessons. Like for instance, math class. Kids are using ChatGPT to finish their homework. So this is what you do. You call up the dumbest kids in class. You know, the ones that slack off, spit wads at each other, right? You call 10 of them up to the board. Give them 10 equations on the homework. And for every student that cannot replicate step for step the process and get the correct answer, you subtract 1% from everyone's paper, which means the class could get capped at 90%. This will get them to realize every single person in class and extending into their lives can have an impact. If you slack off and are uncaring, you will have a negative impact. If you are diligent and understanding, you will have a positive impact. If you think this is cruel, then think about it. You have a child that gets lessons from a book, explanations from a teacher, with examples they should have taken notes on, help from the parents, videos online, and the teachings of AI programs and apps to break down step by step each equation, and they still can't replicate the process and get the right answer, that kid deserves to fail. The universe is courteous enough to give them a 4th, 5th, and 6th strike, and they still fail. It is unacceptable to pass kids like this. Kids need to learn how to use their resources around them and use them to solve problems in their lives. On top of that, understanding the processes so that when life gives them dog shit, they know how to turn that into fertilizer and make things grow. Kids being kicked out for delinquency, failing grades, and apathy towards the school, resulting in the school dropping graduation rates, should be seen as a good thing. It means schools are willing to kick out students who don't uphold their standards. A great lesson for kids. You can be whoever you want and do whatever you want. But if you don't uphold the standards, then you're out of here. It's the first lesson in professionalism. Graduation rates shouldn't be based on if a student failed, but why they failed. Did they not understand the lessons? Did they fail to get clarification? Did they fail to use their resources to an even considerable standard? Did they fail to take after-school tutoring by teachers more than willing to help them? Were they hostile towards other students? Did they fail to make good friends? Are the parents not realizing ways they can help their child in an ever-changing system they struggle to adapt to? What are the child's distraction outlets? Does the child feel heard by their parents? Do they feel restricted from expression because of sexual identity? There are so many more questions. These questions are blunt, and I can also see harsh, but they are as much of those as they are real. They are what outsiders are thinking when they're deciding what to do with their child, and that's if they want to have children at all, knowing this. There's even more questions on why seemingly dumb teenagers and young adults wind up getting good grades, going to great schools, and getting insanely high-paying jobs, but that's a discussion for another day. Here are some things that should be taught to children. How to budget, how to file taxes, how to invest into the stock market, how to hold themselves up professionally, how to do statistics, conversation, communication and comprehension, self-expression and expressive critique, breaking down arguments and debates, applying for a loan, how to apply academia to reality, and the list goes on and on. The point is, focus on tying lessons from school to real life so that students have a reason to pay attention and remember. Oh, and here's another good one. LGBTQ+. Can we stop with this fake diversity crap already? If you don't actually want to represent us respectfully, then step aside for the people who do. With that said, don't be targeting people just because they want to tell stories with LGBT characters. If they are actually bad, fair, rag on them, but try to be constructive, as with any piece of media. And if they're legitimately good, don't tear them down just because the character is transgender. We should be focusing on exploring the expression of perspectives. Another note, stop targeting children for not being straight. Let the child be themselves. We have free will and we should use and explore it. Not only that, people and children have the right to be who they are, as long as the standards are upheld, of course. And on top of that, stop giving a damn about pride flags, especially when you take into consideration that all flags are pride flags. They're all symbols of pride, whether it's in oneself, nationality, sexuality, a city, or even one's country. We just call it patriotism at that point. But the American flag still represents American pride. So who cares if people, restaurants, and shops want to have a pride flag hanging? It's the same thing as having an American flag in a restaurant or outside your house, or for you compensators, 6 of them on the back of your gas-guzzling, exhaust-fuming, lift-kitted Ford truck. LGBTQ, Zoomers, and Millennials. Identity politics isn't going to make you friends. It's only going to echo beliefs. If you are too afraid to challenge your beliefs, then you shouldn't have them at all. Many of them question us not for bigotry, but for understanding. Hostility will only fuel the bigotry you accuse them of having. Next subject. Oh, this is a very political one, divisive one. Abortion and adoption, the double A's. Here's the debate for me because I don't have a uterus. If men had to take a spermicide pill every time they wanted to have casual sex, y'all would be outraged. Y'all might as well be a neutered dog. All pump, no squirt, be an ass. Sorry, that's the last time I'll swear. The point is, stay out of a woman's final say. Think about it like this. She can abort the child, or she can give birth and give the child up for adoption, which could scar the child depending on how long they stay in foster care. Wow, it's almost like we've been villainizing the people who have to make these very difficult decisions. And speaking of adoptions, which offshoots to foster care and orphanages, y'all want to get your panties in a bunch about abortion, but why not adopt foster children and orphans who need the families? You want to help the children, right? Put your money where your mouth is. I'll allow you to complain about abortions to me if you can adopt and raise an orphan or foster child to become a contributing member of society despite the traumatic experience they might have endured. After all, wouldn't you agree that every child deserves a second chance, especially if they were given an unfair hand? Or would you go against that? For the people expecting me to talk about child support, I'm sorry to disappoint. It is one that I know has a lot of gripes, but I have absolutely no experience in. Oh, here's a good one for you. To the wannabe spacefaring billionaires. Stop trying to make humans go to outer space en masse and figure out how to send machines to harvest materials from other uninhabitable planets to transfer back to Earth. Elon won't colonize Mars. It won't happen for a while, because it can't. We'll stick with Mars for the example, but this applies in some facet to any targeted celestial body. Send machines to harvest Mars, have them harvest a bunch of sought-after materials, get them to come back to Earth. Then, once you have a reliable resource track, you send people to make visits to repair the machines and trade back resources to keep the machines operational on Mars. Send and construct small storages for repairmen, tools, and food. Figure out how to send a traffic of food, and from there, you build up. You don't just hop to dumping humans on a planet we don't even know if we could reliably send resources to and from. That level of fantastical delusion will only result in failure and many deaths. Put shortly, figure out how to send inanimate objects first, living beings second, then settlements third. Here's a couple more because I'm running out of time. Immigration and mental illness. We are a melting pot of perspectives as a goal to understand as many walks of life as possible. Immigration is great. We get more perspectives to understand and learn from, more of that positive impact. But when immigration isn't properly maintained, criminals wind up using those loose borders as loopholes to perpetrate crime, literally poisoning the pot. This doesn't mean everyone that comes through our borders is a criminal or maniac or to start mass deporting millions of people every week. That is targeted, bigoted, and discriminatory. And if illegal immigrants and criminals are poisoning the pot, then we would definitely be spreading it. But loose borders can destroy a country. Crime, drugs, and terror has a higher chance of seeping through. You need to be strict in enforcing without acting flat-out oppressive, which is why we need to understand that this issue is like pushing back on a thin glass wall without shattering it. We need to be diligent, assertive, but also respectful. All of these topics that I've gone through and more are extremely complex and have their deep-rooted issues. They affect us all. But we need to understand each and every facet of our problems. We gotta stop yelling about these issues and figure out how to solve them on a smaller level, then elect people who recognize and accept the effort into office to get them solved on a bigger level. We need to serve our communities. This is not just an immigration problem. Mental illness. Can we stop weaponizing mental illness? I've had it with hearing they're mentally ill, therefore unreliable, anytime a logical point or logical points are brought up that other people don't like. I understand taking this situation cautiously and with grains of salt, especially if the person actually is mentally ill. But seriously, stop trying to use every excuse to not listen to someone's valid points. It screams abusive. Actually tackle the argument and admit when you can't. It doesn't mean that they're right. It could just mean that you don't have a response. They could have just thrown you a curveball. Hell, if you open up enough, you might just find a new way of looking at a problem or a situation. On top of that, if a problem is so pervasive that even the mentally ill are able to precisely point it out, then shouldn't we try to focus on understanding and solving that problem? Just food for thought. Well, time to George Carlin this. I will put myself at great personal risk for the sake of entertainment and showmanship. And I will put every single one of you at great personal risk for the same reason. So this next subject, I'm going all out. This is where the true showmanship begins. Law enforcement. There needs to be a shift in how police apply protocol. These offenses throughout history that will repeatedly happen in the future need to stop. Hashtag she's so raped. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, the Goon Squad, the woman that got hit by a train while in the back of a cruiser, the young adult that got punched into a wall and his head slammed into the ground with the surrounding officers doing nothing, a man who was charged with domestic violence for allegedly inflicting a gash despite 9 of 10 of the charged man's injuries from the neck down were not taken into consideration, if not undocumented. And horrifically, there are so many more that have happened and will happen. This intimidation, fear, and negligence from the authorities citizens have no choice but to listen to and comply with will erode the trust the citizens have in the very system they were born in. There will be horrific results. It will shred the peace and trust the citizens have for the authorities, but most importantly, each other and their communities. Let it be known, the authorities need to be enforcing the laws we citizens have to abide by in such a way that peace is maintained throughout the communities. This is enforced by trust and reinforced by the byproduct of safety, security, and protection. If safety, security, and protection is betrayed, trust will begin to crack. You can always repair these cracks before they shatter, but where trust shatters, peace withers. And where you cannot maintain peace, you welcome anarchy, as the people have no reason to abide by your enforced system. Your clothing, cosplay. Your position, a mere concept. When the people who were born into a system, they are forced to follow loose faith in said system, you can't be surprised when fire reigns supreme. When the people who've had to take the lashings for your authoritative negligence and intimidation have had enough, don't be surprised when they burn your country to the ground and you with it, because liberation never came without blood, even if that blood is the very system. This era of negligent, fear-inducing, and intimidating authority is nearing its end, and we will enter the era of safety, security, and protection. It must happen. Otherwise, the former will burn this country faster than the latter can extinguish. And police, you will be to blame. We have the power to make this the country we used to brag about, the greatest country in the world, and we should step up to make it so. We are the ultimate sign of progression and connection to the rest of the world. If we fail, there will never be another version of this country ever again. We will return this country to its proclaimed #1 status while progressing and connecting more than anyone else. And if anyone opposing us wants to stand in our way, they shall know we are the United States. We will stand. We will fight. We will triumph. We are immovable individually, invincible together, because we will take one step forward and then 3 more. And we will expand on those steps the more people we bring on. But keep moving forward nonetheless, because we are the American people. And everything that I've called out and the reasons why they're bad and or need to be fixed should at least be talked about. Even if it's just one. You don't have to like me or love me or agree with me. I'm not encouraging hate, threats, or attempts against me in the same way that I'm not calling for a coup. I want people to start finding ways to create positive change. I could wind up dead for all of this. But even when the people who call out issues are snuffed out, you should not turn a blind eye to the called out issues and those more you find. Otherwise, their work and death will be for absolutely nothing. But in my case, regardless of what happens, progression to tranquility or a descent to anarchy, whether I live to see it or not, I am inevitable. And then let's go worldwide. You have Japan with a struggling economy as the yen has completely been devalued, and not even raising interest rates or doing anything like that is going to help them. You have China that has a weakened labor force, a terrible house market. You have the youth participating in Bailon while simultaneously wanting their leader to step down. You have Russia that has a terrible stock market right now, especially at the fact that they started a delusional war with one of their neighbors. You have the United States that currently has a massive immigration problem, has a drug issue dealing with meth, heroin, but most importantly, fentanyl. And India that is scamming the hell out of America from their 401ks, Roth IRAs, investment in portfolios, inheritances, Social Security money, and the retirement benefits from the financially stupid and elderly. And even better, if it's not India doing that, it's sports betting and gambling. And all of these issues have been called out by a delusional femboy who proclaims himself to be Thanos, on top of the fact that we are in the antebellum period of World War III. This is the greatest period to be living. Oh my God.